In this fun video guide, I'll show you how to make a sheared sundress, just like this one, using McCall's 7946 and Liberty Town Alone from Minerva.com. This dress has elasticated sleeve heads, sheared cuffs, and sheared bodice, and a lovely ruffle hem. We're going to hack the pattern to create a fully sheared bodice using shearing elastic. This is different to the instructions which tell you to use flat elastic. So here's our lovely pattern. The bodice is normally sewn with elastic casings made from bias binding and flat elastic. A reminder, this is M7946 and it comes in 2 split sizes, and we're making view C. So as we're changing the construction of the bodice and sleeve hems, we need to update the notions list. I've highlighted this in yellow so you can locate it on your envelope. So we're going to use shearing elastic sold by the bobbin across that bodice, and I recommend 1 to 2 bobbins of elastic, and then you'll still need flat elastic to finish the sleeves and to finish the upper edge of the bodice. So I'm going to recommend 1 to 2 meters of flat elastic for all sizes. Finally, you'll still need bias binding to make the casings for the sleeves and the upper edge of the bodice. So you're going to need 3 to 4 meters of bias binding in a matching colour, or you could make your own. And here's a quick note about your cutting list. You can skip cutting out pieces 6 and 9. This is for the elastic guide for your hems on your sleeves and the elastic guide for your bodice casings. If you did want to do the sleeves as normal, keep piece 6 in. So most of the instructions are just going to stay the same. There's just going to be a few that we're going to skip. So starting with step 3, just skip that entirely. You don't need to make any casings. Then for the sleeve hems, if you're making view B, you're going to skip step 12. If you're making view C, you're going to skip step 18. And you're just not going to insert any elastic into the sleeves, you're just going to leave that till later. And then you're going to skip step 30 and 31, and you're actually going to replace these with the shearing. Shearing is made by sewing parallel lines of evenly spaced stitching using elastic thread in the bobbin only. You'll want the spacing to be 1.5 centimetres at the minimum, probably going up to 2 centimetres if possible for an attractive finish. Follow the instructions until you reach step 30. Now you're going to wind the elastic onto the bobbin by hand. You can see it's taut without being stretched, keeping close to the previous rows. And you want to get it about 80 to 90% full because it's very bulky thread and you don't want it to get jammed in your machine. You'll probably need 3 bobbins worth of elastic, so pre-wind them all now to save time when you're sewing your stitching. So the bobbin is installed completely as normal. I have a top loading tray, so I'm installing the bobbin, ensuring it goes around that tension hook, and then feeding it through to the top of the machine before closing the lid. Shearing elastic goes in the bobbin only. Regular thread is used in the top of your machine and through your needle. You'll then look at your stitch settings. Increase your stitch length so it's between 2.6 and 3.0. Anything less than that and you'll make it extremely time consuming. You'll also move your needle to the far left position for all subsequent rows of stitching. This means when you align the right side of your presser foot with the previous row, you'll maintain even stitching that's around 1.5 centimetres apart. If you can't move your needle, mark out lines that are 1.5 to 2 centimetres apart in even parallel rows using tailor's chalk or air erasable pencil. So starting at the sleeve hem, I've marked a line about 6 centimetres up from the hem on the right side of the fabric. I'm backstitching as normal at the start of my sewing and I've not moved my needle for this first row of shearing. As you sew, the elastic will start to gather up the fabric behind your press foot, but just keep going. We're only going to sew 2 rows of shearing at the sleeve cuffs to create that lovely bell effect. When you reach the end, backstitch to secure the threads as you normally would. Now it's time to sew our second row of stitching. You're going to first move the needle over to the far left position. Then you'll line your presser foot so the right hand side is next to the previous row of stitching. This means the next row will be perfectly spaced at around 1.5 centimetres from the first row. If you haven't moved your needle and you're marking the stitching lines, aim for 1.5 to 2 centimetres between each row of stitching. Use your right hand to stretch the fabric flat as it goes under the presser foot and keep the parallel spacing even. Shearing can be a little time consuming, and using your right hand to stretch the fabric out can make it a little tired, so make sure to take regular breaks. When it's time to sew the bodice, you're going to use the line of stitching where your bias channel is visible on the right side of the fabric and line that up with your presser foot for the first row. Because the bodice front isn't a straight rectangle, every line of stitching will curve around the bust shape at the top of the front bodice. You'll probably want around 17 rows of stitching, but anything between 14 and 20 will also do. How about sewing 12 rows and then trying on the dress quickly to check where you want the lines of stitching to finish? Here's what your stitching should look like on the inside. Well done on finishing all your rows of shearing. There's just one step left to make sure the stitches look their best. Hover a steamy iron over the top of your stitching and release jets of steam that will shrink the elastic and create the beautiful smocked effect. You can now continue on with the rest of the instructions, inserting the elastic into the casing and hemming your dress. I hope you've enjoyed this hack. Please follow us on social media for more inspiring ideas.